Hey, this is American Lawn Sale Fan, and as promised, I was going to do a quick review on the Emerson Karambit. More specifically, this is the Flipper Karambit. So this actually has a flipper to open, as well as the Emerson Wave Catch. And I initially bought it for two reasons. One is I'd always followed Emerson knives, but I had never owned one yet, and I'd always had my eye on the Emerson Karambit, particularly because I do like Karambit knives. Many people are familiar with Emerson Karambits. This one is a slightly new design, and because of the flipper, it changed a lot. So let me show you a difference. What I had done is I went out and bought on eBay used a very rough original Emerson Karambit. There's no flipper on this one, as you can tell. The eBay seller, it is a genuine Emerson Karambit, but the eBay seller was very honest that he had really used it hard, and there were some minor issues. Right now there's an issue with the screws because the threading has kind of come out, so it's I can't put a pocket clip on the reverse grip style. I can only put it on this side, but it's still a solid knife. Still works very well. But to real quickly show you, the classical Emerson Karambit, combat Karambit, has, of course, like most liner locks, a stop pin. So when the blade comes out, it stops right along the pin. And the detent also for most Emerson Karambits is aided by this little detent here. So it's not really working on the liner, it's working on the blade itself. Well, that had to change when they made the flipper model, because if you notice, this flipper tab is in the way, so they couldn't put a stop pin anywhere right here. And the detent, of course, is now gone. So how the heck does this thing stop its motion when you open to lock open? Well, it has to do with a hinge joint inside the knife itself. So for those of you who might be more familiar with the classical Emerson Karambit, combat Karambit, this one is a little different in just its function. Like I said, it's got a hinge joint, which is a little different, and but everything else is pretty much the same. But like I said, hinge joint, no stop pin. It seems to work fine. I'm not noticing any issues whatsoever. There's no blade play whatsoever. This thing is tight. I just don't know that it was necessary, because if you're used to flippers on a ball bearing drive, well, that's not what this is, because if you just use finger pressure, that's about as much as you're going to get. You'd have to really loosen the tension screws, and even then you'd probably have to give it a little flip as well. And of course, being that it is an Emerson knife and it's got the patent Emerson Wave, whether you like forward grip or reverse grip, I don't know why you wouldn't just make use of it right out of your pocket. So just something to consider. This knife will set you back almost 300 bucks, believe it or not. You can find them on Amazon. They're usually about anywhere from $235 to sometimes you'll find them to about $250, a little more if you go directly to Emerson, especially with shipping. So this is not a cheap knife. So the question is it worth it? Well, let's talk about the whole design in itself. Emerson likes to claim, and rightfully so, that they were the first to come out with a folding Karambit tactical knife. And more importantly, with the Wave Catch, they were the first to design a self-defense knife which you could easily rip through the ring, pull out from your pants pocket, and it would be ready to go, ready to deploy. Since then, of course, a lot of other knife companies have come out with similar designs, and they have either licensed the Emerson Wave, like what Fox Knives does, or they have come up with their own rip-off versions, if you will, some kind of mechanism that allows you to pull from your pants pocket and bring the knife open. So that being said, how does this compare with some of the other knives that are out on the market with this overall design? Tip up, blade carry, allowing for the ring to be exposed out of the pocket, and have some kind of catching mechanism where deployment is instantaneous. The most popular is, of course, Fox Knives Italy, but also Spyderco has a version of this, as well as Cold Steel and a couple of other ones out there. My previous video is I did a review on the 511 Steve Tarani tactical karambit, which pretty much has everything that the Emerson karambit does. A little different style. It didn't have a catch, but then if you watch the video, I informed you how to purchase a quick attachable thumb stud, and that will work just as well for quick deployment. Notice that the blade is a lot different from the Emerson. It's got a much more, when you line them up with the rings, you notice that the blade has got more of an aggressive style. You could argue this is, I mean, let's be honest, folding karambits are not traditional. Karambits were traditionally fixed blades, but this has more an Indonesian style curvature blade, slight curve, versus this has got a more Filipino design where the blade is more forward and aggressive. Okay, getting back to my point is, so this is going to be mid 200 bucks, just short of 300. This, even with the separate attachment purchase for the attachment, is going to be about 90 bucks. And then even you look at a Fox knife, for example, those will run you about, say, 130 bucks, maybe more. Either way, they're still going to be cheaper than this one. So, is this worth it? Well, real quickly, like I said, this Emerson likes to say they were the first to really come up with this design. Being the first, they incorporate a lot of things that have since become pretty standard on most knives. G10 scales, of course, every knife company pretty much has that. Finger grooves, ergonomic design, so forth. Liner lock. Oh yeah, real quick about the liner lock is some people have fears about liner locks, and that's one criticism of Emerson for expensive it is. Why didn't they use a stronger mechanism? There's nothing wrong with the Walker liner lock as long as it's done right. It's very easy to do it cheap, because remember, all you got to do is split one of the liners, move them over, grind down the back end of the blade, and as long as it fits. But in order to do it right, there's a little more fit and finish that you need to do to make sure that it works. And just to show you on this Emerson, first of all, the liners they're pretty thick, which is good. They also cover a good amount of the blade, the back end of the blade, which is also good. The lockup, of course, is very good as well. You can hear everything. You can feel everything lock up the way it should. But most important is a couple things. Is when you look at the lockup, it's not quite flush, but that's what you want. You want it to be tight, because this is going to self-correct over time, and that's all right. And listen to how much force it takes to undo it. You can actually hear it. I mean, that takes a little bit of push in order to get the lock undone. If I'll give you an example from just a different knife. This is a Blackhawk Point Man, just to show you the difference. When I push this liner lock, and nothing's wrong with this liner lock, by the way, but I push this one, there's no noise, no creep, no nothing. I just push it and it closes. So once again, with the Emerson, it's so tight in there that it actually makes some noise when you push it over. So it's in there tight. True to Emerson, the locking side liner is made of titanium steel. To cut costs, they have since, they used to have a time when both liners were titanium. They've since just made the locking side titanium, just to cut costs. But anyway, so don't worry about it being a liner lock. As Emerson uses, they for all their blades they use 154 cm steel, and of course it's a chisel grind, meaning it's only ground on one side. This I found is actually a nice thing. You can buy Lansky curved sharpeners that aren't flat stones, and just draw them across, stroke them, this way. If you're just kind of cleaning up the blade, and if you want to aggressively sharpen, start with this way. So it's a very easy to care for knife. It really is. The number one reason why these cost so much is because, as we all know, they are made in the United States, and that brings up the cost. As far as, and this is considered a small batch company, but still, they're still a manufactured brand, but they are manufactured here in the United States, and that does bring up the cost. Is it worth it? I like to think it is. I'm human as the next person, but I try to buy as much as I can, all my products, as much as I can, to make sure that they're made in the United States. But do I have to compromise sometimes? Absolutely, we all do. I don't care how patriotic you are. If you're watching this YouTube channel, I promise you something in your house is made by the Chicoms. My newest car, it's owned by the Japanese, but it was 100% made in Mississippi by Mississippi workers. I'm happy with that. And yeah, I try to purchase as many things, my firearms and so forth, as I can in the United States, and this offers me one opportunity to do so. If you look at most of the manufacturers, it's the big companies, or bigger companies that still manufacture in the United States, whether it's Benchmade or whether it's Zero Tolerance. If you think about it, there's always a cheaper alternative. If you're a zero tolerance guy and you like their designs, but you don't want to pay those prices, you go to Kershaw, because they have similar designs. So for something like Emerson, there are a lot of other options out there that will be cheaper, but they will always be made somewhere else. Fox knives is made in Italy. Some of the other knives like Cold Steel and stuff, they're going to be made in Taiwan or China. Even this 511, which I really do like, on a personal level, is made in Taiwan, and that's why it's cheaper. So yeah, could they take this knife, this design, put G10 handles on it, put the same steel on it, and contract with a company, an overseas company, and make it cheaper? Yeah, probably they could. I don't know how good the quality control would be in terms of getting kind of that tight lockup that I just talked about and stuff, but it could be done. But the point being is, do I believe it's ultimately worth it? Yeah, I think it is. It's nice as best we can to purchase products that are still made in the United States, and it's nice that Emerson still makes great products that are still made in the good old US of A. So that's all I got. So this American Lawn Sale fan, God bless you and those you love.